Welcome back, Guardians. My name is Samlab, and today we'll be talking about my experience with Renegades. Before I do that, however, I'd like to make a couple of things clear. Beyond this point, I'll be discussing quite a few things that are spoiler territory. Also, I want to state that Renegades as an expansion doesn't erase all the numerous things Bungie did which broke Destiny 2. In my mind, there is no doubt about it. Things like the portal, the reward systems, the armor changes, etc. are broken and still need to be addressed moving forward in Destiny. That aside, I'd like to give my personal perspective on the story and additionally the quality of life and weapons added into Destiny. As I talk about this, I have added some spoiler-free footage in the beginning half of this video just to make sure that I'm not directly spoiling any major plot points. This is of course a Star Wars themed expansion, and many of you have expressed a strong dislike to this, and honestly, I'd encourage you to at least watch a playthrough. It's a tough balance, including elements from another IP into Destiny, which is already influenced by the same movies, books, games, etc. I think that the difference with Destiny is that it had to carve out a unique take, and dropping Star Wars on it maybe tampered with some of it, maybe it didn't. I'll leave that up to you, but I'm happy to give my thoughts and take on this. So, beyond this point, expect spoilers. If you've stuck with me this far, you've just made it to the Lawless Frontier. To make things a little more helpful, I'll be breaking this video into 3 sections. Section 1, we will focus on the core story beats with some adjacent questions and my thoughts. Section 2, we'll focus on asking the bigger questions for the wider story of Destiny. Question 3, or Section 3, will round up looking at where these threads could take us in the future. Renegade's story picks up on the heels of Edge of Fate, with the Drifter discovering the Barrent Imperium led by the Prime Loom and Dredgen Bale, a self-proclaimed Dredgen. Drifter receives a dream from the inner orbits of the Nine about a calamity about to befall Earth. Springing into action, he enlists the help of Eris Morn, Arnor from Praxic Order, Ido of House Light, and the weapon, us. I've scripted some rough thoughts, but I want to talk about the story first and what I enjoyed. I think for a follow-up to Edge of Fate, this was very good. I didn't see any major plot points that I felt, okay, this seems weird or this seems out of place. Honestly, I was probably in suspense for majority of what I experienced. I don't think it was to the level of Edge of Fate, and it certainly wasn't to the level of the Final Shape. Far from it. But I think this expansion is up there. I am reasonably interested, I think is the safe way to put it. I haven't really watched or listened to any other content creators' point of views because I didn't want to essentially regurgitate their experiences, but I wanted to put a video together that summarized what my thoughts are, generally speaking. So I think the thing that I want to touch on first is the narrative threads between Dredgen Bale and Dredgen Vale. I mentioned that he's self-proclaimed. Dredgen Bale is an ordinary guy from the Last City who decided to make himself a Dredgen, and he has been reading books of sorrow. He's been reading the books that the Dredgen read in order for you to become a Dark Guardian. He does not have a ghost, nor does he have access to the light. He is an individual who was either picked or he went to 6. We're not really sure. Information hasn't been given to us. exactly on how this transaction has taken place between him and Six, but Six has chosen to use this guy who decided to call himself a Dredgen long before, I think, Six knew about him, and he's mimicking Dredgen Vale. Now, many of you will know Dredgen Vale from Destiny's lore, flavor text, all sorts. Dredgen Vale is a Dark Guardian legit, and Dredgen Vale is a Guardian who was out there hunting down Guardians and taking their ghosts, and is probably one of the most sinister figures in the shadows of Destiny's story. Has other Dredgen under him who are doing nefarious things. In Renegades, that Bale does a similar thing, and there are some cutscenes where he even has a hover flatbed where he's collecting ghosts. That's where Dredgen Bale's story overlaps with Dredgen Vale. I'm sure there's more to it, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in terms of what the end of the campaign discusses with the story. Now, there's also Primus Loom, who is actually a defector from Kayatol, from Empress Kayatol's Legion, and essentially thinks she's gone soft by entering into a coalition with humanity and the other races, so much so that Loom believes that Kayatol has allowed the peoples of the coalition to enter into the hearts of the Cabal and soften them. That's essentially what he's upset about. So aligning with Six and also Dredgen Bale made sense. And so what happened was Six pulled this Legion of Cabal through time and distorted it, giving them enough time to essentially, over centuries, amass a huge Cabal Legion, bring them back forward into present time, and then they just popped up. And that's why they suddenly started appearing across the system and were unidentifiable, wearing new gear which has been influenced by dark matter, and they built the Imperium ship, which was basically a giant dark matter ray, was the best way to describe it, that had the capability to essentially strip Guardians of their light and ghosts of their light in a way that was so visceral. It was essentially like Guardians were being unmade. So if the Traveler blessed Guardians with the light, this weapon stripped Guardians of the light and their ghosts, all in one foul swoop. And it only affected Guardians, it didn't affect any organic matter, which I find fascinating. But it was a weapon specifically designed to destroy the City of Earth and to destroy the Traveler. And thankfully, we have blown it up, but I'll get to that in a moment. So then there's also Six, and during the course of the campaign, Six uses hive logic to essentially attempt to seed its own existence. Now, we're talking about a god that is a mind of an entire planet that wants to enter into our chemical reality. That's what a lot of the lore talks about in terms of the Nine wanting to escape their current existence. And Six is trying to do that by brute force. And it's basically using hive logic, and specifically the tithe system, to enact this. But how do you get tithe large enough to seed a god from the fourth dimension into the third dimension without them dying? Well, you need tithes. So he observed everything that King Oryx did and essentially replicated that by linking a tithe system to Dredgen Bale, and Dredgen Bale used the Cabal to create this Death Star. And the idea was, if we destroy a god and all its subjects, then that will give Six enough enough tithe to do what he wants to do. Obviously, we have stopped that from happening, but this is massive. This is a big threat. I'm going to assume also that potentially, based on how the 9 law works, it's either 6 or the 10th member of the 9 who were punished. And I'm not sure who it is. It could be that the 10th member of the 9 was punished and that's why there's only 9 members of the 9, or it could be that 6 has always been the one who doesn't agree. 6 fundamentally doesn't agree with the inner orbits. He or it doesn't agree that us, the weapon, is the chosen weapon. It doesn't agree that Lodi is the emissary, and it doesn't want anything to do with the inner orbits at all. It is being completely selfish and wants to do its own thing. Now, there is an entire lore book dedicated to some of the preface of discussion around the 9, and I think that this is probably the perfect time for me to revisit and finish that video, so I definitely will. It's another long one, as there's multiple long lore videos that I'm cooking up right now that I need to talk about this and break it down. I want to also quickly jump on the fact that there is the 9 pantheon. There is a pantheon of gods here, and it's getting serious because they're all trying to do their own thing. The inner orbits are 1, the outer orbits are, I don't even know what's happening, because we have, in the outer orbits, we have 6. We also have the fact that the sun is the oldest of all the 9, and so has a very different take. And so, yeah, there's a lot to explore there. Gonna do a video on that. I'm doing my best. It's already 50% written, so the task I have is finishing it. And y'all know there's always something new to do before I can finish a video, but I've promised you all with the poll that I put out that I will batch cook videos, and that's what we're going to stick to, so that we have like 6 epic, maybe 35-minute long episodic videos that are just queued up, and they will release, and you all have the opportunity to watch them, and I will specifically put them in separate playlists so that you can enjoy those. And I will change the way that things work on the channel so that you can see what is like the packaged season for what I'm talking about. I think that's how we're going to be doing stuff now. So moving on from 6 and the Pantheon of the 9, the last thing I want to talk about in my sort of experience about the story is Arnor. I really enjoy Arnor as a character. There is a lot about her attitude. Because she's got a whole lot of attitude, but she also presents a fascinating concept, and it's this idea that she's been so stuck in her ways, but she's willing to evolve, and it makes sense why she was Ikora's essentially Padawan for a while, her apprentice. They're similar, but I think Arnor is quicker to change and adapt, and that could just be because maybe she's a younger Guardian in terms of her outlook on the way that things are being done. She doesn't seem to be settling into things. She kind of reminds me of Shayura in a lot of ways. I would love to see a TV series about Arnor. Maybe that's something we need to write, and just do a whole spin-off series about Arnor and the Praxic Order. That would be seriously dope. But yeah, her story beat is interesting. I found it fascinating, but it felt rushed in the grand scheme of things. But given how everything in Destiny is about being fast-paced, I get it. I understand that there's a lot of story to fit in with this campaign, and it's important for you all to feel like you're getting a good sense of story without having to sit there for epic amounts of time for her story to evolve. Then there's also the question of the Praxic Blade. I was extremely skeptical about the idea of lightsabers being included in Destiny, and them being essentially weapons of sorrow, and how exactly the narrative team were going to explain that. But I really feel like they did a good enough job. I did feel rushed. I had to use the built-in looking for group in-game to find 2 other players to run through with. However, they rushed. They literally raced through every part of each encounter, so it was difficult to focus on the story because I had to focus on quick, let's get through, let's do it. And then we finally got into the room where you finally get to pick up your Praxic Blade, or you forge your Praxic Blade, and I didn't really get a chance to like look at that room and take it all in and hear the storyline, because as soon as they grabbed their lightsabers, they were out of there ready to use them, which was the next part of the quest. So that was frustrating. I really wanted to take my time and like drink it in. So I found that after we did everything, they did everything, we were pushed out to orbit, and immediately they left the game, and I was just like, okay, I need 5 minutes to just get up, walk around, grab a drink of water, reflect on what I've just experienced and what I've just heard, because right now it felt like, at that moment it felt like sensory overload, and I wasn't even sure what was going on. And then I needed a minute to look at the Praxic Blade itself. It comes with a stock color, which I'm gonna assume, I'm colorblind, so forgive me if I'm wrong, I'm gonna assume this is blue, even though it kind of looks like a fuchsia-y purple to me, but I'm gonna go with blue. And when you look at the options, you can see all the different color options that you can choose, and each one I believe does something a little bit different. But what's cool is there's a lot of customizability with the Praxic Blade, and I really enjoyed that. The gameplay loop, oh my goodness, this thing is probably the funnest thing I've ever had to use in Destiny to date. I will go as far as saying that the synergy between using a lightsaber plus subclasses, I don't like the subclass rework, has kind of blown my mind in a number of ways, because now it feels like we are just jumping in and out of subclass abilities and essentially having what is like 2 supers, right? We have the regular super, and then you have your secondary, which is your I can't remember what it's called. It's like being ascendant, your awakening super, and having the ability to combine prismatic super with regular super is phenomenal. And then channeling that through the Praxic Blade and you doing double the damage, it's just, yeah, absolutely incredible to me. I was blown away. The story as well, I believe the story was really good with the Praxic Order and just bringing them in. And I really hope that the narrative team give the Order a more physical presence in the world of Destiny, as in the game. I would love to see a social space that kind of feels like the what's it called, the on Mars in the Throne world we have the area where we can go and craft. I would love to see them add something like that for the Praxic Order. In fact, it was weird to me that we weren't forging our Praxic Blade in that place. Instead, we were going to a temple, which is a place that normally the Order are in control of, etc, etc. So yeah, some kind of HQ would be really good, and I would love to see more the exploration of the Order going forward. It's not unusual for the majority of my videos on the channel to heavily focus on the wider tapestry and cosmos of Destiny, which is intentional because it's following the clues leading to the future, which is exciting. I'm fascinated by the themes and concepts evoked in the lore and would like to see them evolve within the game. But I understand this is difficult and not everything translates well into a first-person shooter. 3's death is a massive catalyst for the story of Renegades. And even now, here, her name is mentioned still. The breakdown of life as we know it is being transformed across the system, but specifically more here at home on Earth. And the outer orbits don't care, and they want out, because they're afraid. And the inner orbits are bent on the life of the universe remaining alive and being bound together to escape the night, to escape extinction. Destiny is at its best when there are a lot of questions. And the weird thing about Renegades is literally right in the middle of the gameplay, we're being asked questions. And what I mean by that is you could be sat in orbit and you get a voice line asking you a question. And there was one voice line in particular that I heard from Eris Morn, who says something along the lines of that Zavala asked her to come and ask us a question, and that question is, what do the worm gods have in common with the night? Which is a fascinating and exciting question, and I will probably be doing a video entirely on that at some point in the future when there's more information about it, but I think it's a really interesting question to ask, and it intrigued me. But dropping it while I'm in orbit, or potentially going AFK, reminds me of in Lightfall, when we had the Veil containment, and we would have those audio logs in the Veil containment facility, which nobody knew about till it was discovered, because there was no notification that that facility was even active, or that we could go into it to experience these voice logs. This feels even worse. This feels like an accident that shouldn't have happened, and I don't know if that was intentional, because they're thinking thematically, oh, it would be cool if right after a mission, you know, that moment before you go and check your character player, you get a voice line talking to you. Some people sit in orbit for hours because they're AFK. I feel like, to me, that's the worst time. Why? Because I literally went AFK. I went to use the restroom, and I came back to catch like half of whatever Eris said, and all I heard was the question. And okay, that makes sense. That's kind of cool and organic, potentially. But I think also, genuinely, people could miss out on those, so I don't know if those are regular. I don't know if they repeat. I love the idea of it being discoverable, but I think that makes more sense to me when I'm stood in front of an NPC and they're saying voice lines out in the open, and I happen to catch one of those, and it's like, oh, what did they just say? I need to record my screen, rather than me running back from whatever I was doing to catch the end of a question and quickly hitting record, knowing that I've missed it and I don't know if I'll ever hear that again. So yeah, it didn't feel well placed to me, and I don't know if Bungie watches my videos at all, but if they do, narrative team, I would love to see those put somewhere or built into something somehow, so that we don't miss out on crucial questions being asked like that. And in a way, it was a little, I don't know what the best way to describe it, but it felt out of place, and it almost felt like that comment that we as lore content creators make, where we say Destiny is better when it's asking big questions was taken literally, and now we're literally asking questions out loud to the player. But that was something that happened like in lore, or came about because of situations or running a mission, like the Insight Terminus mission ends and Ghost says, who is Odzot and what is Oxa? That makes sense. We've just ended a mission because Odzot was trying to break into the Vex network, and all sorts of revelations about the Oxa machine, and essentially more spoiler related territory, but just dropping it to us whilst we're sat in orbit feels out of place to me personally. That's my take. The last thing I want to talk about in our universal story section is the emissaries. I think the narrative team did an excellent job of dropping some major plot developments and information about the lore of emissaries. And in case you're wondering, I'm referring to plot development about Lodi and how the Nine choose their emissary. And what was great to see was even Xur made it into a cutscene. So for new players, I think, who don't really know what an emissary is, or who Lodi is, or even who maybe Xur is, I think it will give them a little more context. I think there could be more information, but given the time frame of that cutscene, it makes sense that it was the length of time that it was, and how much they managed to squeeze in, especially if they have never met Xur yet in the tower or played Dares of Eternity. So I really hope that this kind of thing continues and maybe gets fleshed out a lot more. This is probably the bigger question that matters more than Renegades itself, and that is the future of Destiny's story and what that looks like. The Fate saga had originally been sold to us in a way which suggests Guardians would be at the forefront of pioneering a new frontier into the wilds of space. While some of that is still true, in my understanding, the new frontier is slowly emerging. And you see this throughout Renegades and the continuous idea of old inflexible authority being challenged, and the recognition that rules and wilds help to temper one another in coexistence. In the way prismatic is the balance of light and darkness. This theme is explored with Arnor. Our character has been moulded in affixed traditions and teachings of the Order, similar to the Jedi Order in Star Wars. Moving forward from everything that's taken place in Edge of Fate and Renegades is going to be interesting, as narratively this suggests we're no longer bound by the formal constraints of the Last City. In fact, we're almost walking through similar reasoning that Lakshmi II fought and died for. The Vanguard think that by keeping citizens in the dark, it will be better for their safety, but by doing so, it's actually making things worse. This is a similar problem the original factions had: Future War Cult, Dead Orbit, and New Monarchy, who up until now we have no idea where they went. But their empty bases of operations still exist in the temporary tower of the Last City. So, what do you think, Guardians? If you've played through Renegades, let me know your thoughts in the comments. Consider giving this video a like, subscribe, and click the bell to find out when my next lore video goes live. Remember that no matter what you're facing at this moment in time, you can do all things. Stay safe, and Godspeed.